section when you can actually see and hear me. If you can just give me a 5x5 or something, let me know. I'd appreciate it. So just want to confirm that everything's working correctly here. It's been several years since we've done a live stream here in the general community, and I just want to start off by welcoming everyone. Like I said, I was thinking about it right before this live stream. It's probably been about 5 years since I've done a live stream. So it's really good to see you all live again. If we haven't met before, my name is Chris. I own and operate City Prepping, a channel and website that's dedicated to practical preparedness for uncertain times. Over 1 million people follow this channel because they really want to stay informed and take real steps to protect their families. And tonight, I want to take time to share my preparedness journey, and I hope to inspire you with practical steps that you can take now. And at the end of the video, we're going to open up a Q&A period for about 15 minutes. So if you have questions, please put them all in uppercase, and we'll scroll back later through the comments and try to answer those questions. So let's jump into this by beginning with a simple question. If disaster struck tomorrow, would you be able to take care of yourself and your family, and for how long? Can you make it for 3 days, a week, 3 weeks? And I really ask this because I think we're in a time where we're not seeing things recover as fast as they once did. And based on what we're seeing, it doesn't appear this issue will improve anytime soon. Most families cannot bounce back that quickly. Studies show that the average household has less than 3 days of food, no backup water, and no plan in place for when the power goes out.
Lots of volume complaints.
What's that? Lots of volume. So if you're having issues with the volume, let me know. By the way, we can bump that up a little. So you know how to bump that up on your end? All right. So we're going to try to bump it up here in just a second. Hopefully that will help out. So, even at the same time, the world is really more unstable than it has been in decades. Think about what we see in the news right now. A war in Ukraine that has dragged on for years, conflict in the Middle East pulling in more nations, while both of which are driving energy costs higher. Food inflation is still climbing. Just last month, eggs and bread spiked again in my local store. And cyber attacks on U.S. power grids have been reported in multiple states, reminding us how fragile that the systems really are. Families in California, they're facing insurance companies pulling out entirely after wildfires, while friends of mine in Florida are watching hurricane coverage costs double. And on top of that, jobs are shifting fast. Where I live, I've seen small businesses already cut staff as AI has really begun to reshape industries entirely. Just last week, a CEO announced 4,000 layoffs and cited AI as a reason. And I believe we're really living in the early stages of what's coming. And like many of you, I see many of these challenges growing even worse in the coming years. And these disasters, they really come in many forms. Some are close to home, like rolling blackouts in my own community. Some are thousands of miles away, but they hit us through higher prices or shortages. Others are immediate and personal, like a sudden loss of a job, a storm that knocks out power, or a medical emergency that you didn't see coming. But watching how these pressures overlap, I do not expect quick rebounds like we once did. And that's why I plan ahead. And these are just not rare events, they are daily reminders that stability is fragile. All it takes is one major disruption, and the systems that we rely on can collapse overnight. And combine any two or more, and you have what we refer to as a polycrisis. And people don't typically plan for this type of scenario. They always think that's not going to happen to me, but it does. And the worst part is that most people never really recover from that type of disaster. After Hurricane Katrina, entire neighborhoods in New Orleans never came back. Families lost everything, and some never returned. After the fires in Paradise, California, many people were left homeless for years. Even today, some still have not rebuilt.
You get a lot of audio complaints. I got this thing cranked up.
Hopefully y'all can hear me. I know we're having some issues with audio, so let me know if you're not able to hear. Is it just too low? I'll try to, hopefully we can get this to pick up. If you want to hold on 1 second, let me just go check this audio setup real fast. So let me see this. I'll be right back. Audio input. Yeah, that's not. focus on this one. Sorry about that. It's been a while since I've done a live stream, so it's always fun dealing with the technical side when you're setting these up. So hopefully that helps. We tried to bump up the audio a little, so let me know if that helps. Several of the people pointed out that they turn up their headphones, so hopefully that helps a little, or just turn it up. But if it still is an issue, let us know. We'll bump it up a little more. So as we just talked about a second ago, even today, when we look at some of these areas that have been hit really hard by a lot of these disasters, some people haven't even had a chance to rebuild yet. And we're really living in a time where instability is becoming the norm. And the ability to adapt is what really determines who weathers a storm and who does not. And that's the line between those who move forward and those who are left behind. And this is why we're here. Hopefully it's why you're here with me here today. And I'm going to make it worth your time. So today I'm going to walk you through 3 critical survival steps that every family needs to really take to avoid panic, protect their loved ones, and build genuine peace of mind in an increasingly unstable world. And for more than a decade, I've been teaching preparedness through systems that really work. And on this channel, I've shared how to store food, how to prepare for blackouts, how to make evacuation plans, and how to recognize early warnings that can affect your family's security. Now, before we get into the 3 steps I'm going to give you today, let me share a little about why I personally started preparing. I've shared this, this kind of story here on my YouTube channel, but as a kid, I was active in Boy Scouts and I became an Eagle Scout. And the motto, be prepared, it really shaped the way I think. Additionally, I think growing up in Texas really reinforced my views of being prepared and self-sufficient because it's part of the culture. After high school, I went to the University of Texas in Austin, and during my time as a student, I did humanitarian work in Mexico each spring break with the university campus organization that I was involved with. I've always had a passion to help people in any way that I can, and I found opportunities during this time of my life. And it was during this time that I saw firsthand how communities with so little cared for each other and really leaned on family for resilience. After college, I became a minister and worked with a ministry in Southern California, and an opportunity came up to travel to Afghanistan right after the Taliban was pushed out of Kabul. And I felt passionate about this opportunity, and I went there in the summer of 2003. I worked alongside physicians and educators at Kabul University. I spent time helping teach English in the university. And this is where I saw firsthand what a collapsed nation really looks like. There's no rules, no reliable systems, and people were forced to adapt daily. Yet people still survived. And living in a city with more than 1 million people, I realized that survival in an urban environment is possible if you have the right mindset and systems in place. And those experiences, along with years of teaching here on this channel and building my own off-grid setup, it really taught me something that I cannot shake. No one is coming to save you when things get difficult. You are responsible for yourself and your family. And that's not just theory for me. When I have learned to preserve food, when I've wired my own personal backup systems, when I practice evacuation drills with my kids, the lessons have become clear. Skills, they matter. Experience matters. And each time I tried something with my own hands, I felt my confidence grow. And I've really taken prepping to a whole new level in my life. About 12 years ago is when I got really hardcore about it. And living in a disaster-prone area where I'm at here and completing CERT training with my local fire department, it really opened my eyes to just how fragile life can be. I started building food and water storage, raising chickens, gardening, and creating bug-out and evacuation plans. And when 2020 hit, everything changed, and I'm sure you know what I mean. Even as a long-term prepper who actually warned on this channel about a possible pandemic a few months before it actually began, I'll be honest, I was shocked at how fast systems have really began to unravel. And for many people, I think it was a wake-up call. Shelves emptied, supply chains froze, and normal life slipped away almost overnight. And that year really reminded me that help, it's not always fast, and it sometimes does not come. That realization, it's even more since that time, has shaped how I even prepare. And I want to pause here for a moment and share my personal view of prepping, what really drives and motivates me. I'm not a prepper because I think the end of the world is coming. I prepare because I see an uncertain future. Our nation is more divided than ever. My background in science has shown me just how fragile our ecosystems are and how close they are to collapse. And at the same time, the global stage is shifting. Wars are already underway. NATO and Russia are edging closer to direct conflict, and China's threats against Taiwan, they grow louder. Serious challenges, they're on the horizon. And all this really points to what I think is a hard truth. The world as we know it is changing fast, and the potential for disruption, it's growing. Most people, they just live one crisis away from panic, one step from becoming a refugee or an evacuee. And that's not where you want to be when your family is counting on you. Before we move to the first step, let's clear up a big misconception. When you hear the word prepper, what comes to mind? Maybe you picture a bunker, camo gear, and stockpiles of ammunition. And that's the stereotype. And for some that choose that lifestyle, I can respect it if that's what works for them. But I've tried to take a more practical approach for everyday people that see the uncertainty in a world and want to really take practical steps to secure their family without having to make massive changes in their lives. At its core, prepping is about one thing. It's about creating margins. And in preparedness circles, a margin simply means the breathing room you build into your life, whether it's a financial margin to cover an unexpected bill, a food margin to carry you through a supply disruption, or a skill margin that allows you to adapt when systems fail. Think of it as building a buffer into your life so that when disruptions come, you're not caught off guard or forced into desperation. And I build margin because I do not assume tomorrow is going to look like yesterday. If it does, great. If it does not, I'll be able to take care of my family. One of my students in our city prepping membership community, Casper, said it well. I used to prep out of fear, and following Chris, I realized prepping is about calm, practical steps. It's more likely I'm going to lose my job than face a global catastrophe, so I prepare for what is most likely first. So a margin, it's a system. When I first started prepping, even before I had heard of the term preparedness prepping, I didn't think in terms of bunkers. I thought in terms of margins, of creating buffer zones of space between crisis and collapse. That began for me and my wife with savings. We built a small emergency fund so that if our transmission broke or our pipes leak, we wouldn't have to rely on credit. Financial stability, in my view, is one of the most overlooked yet essential forms of preparedness. It's a system that supports every other system. In my area where I live, my margin also means water. We live in a dry climate, so I prioritize water storage early on. We live in an area that's prone to earthquakes and other natural disasters, and if something were to happen, I didn't want my family to be in a desperate situation. I started with 3 and 5 gallon water containers, gradually building a supply that gave us breathing room in case of disruption. Food came next, and at first we only had what was in our cupboards. But as I got more serious, I converted a closet into a rotating 3-week food supply. And it wasn't just stockpiling. We integrated that supply into regular meals so nothing went to waste. Power was another system that I built. And like many, I started with a gas generator. It wasn't just for convenience. It was about keeping critical equipment running. And then there was the evacuation plan. Living in an area prone to earthquakes and wildfires, I really knew that we needed a clear strategy to get out safely if things went sideways. And that plan became part of our margin too. And this is what margin looks like in practice. It's practical. And prepping means having extra food and water in your pantry. It means knowing what to do if the lights go out for a week. It means having a plan if a wildfire, flood, or lockdown hits your area. It means being financially unprepared for the unexpected. Prepping is not about running from society. It's about ensuring your family's safety and stability when society wobbles. Margin is that system that makes that possible. Now, up to this point, I have focused on the practical side of preparedness. But at its core, my journey really comes down to this. The future feels increasingly unstable. Prices continue to rise, safety nets are shrinking, and the systems that we depend on, they don't bounce back quickly after a crisis. Wars are on the horizon and global power dynamics are shifting. We're in a time of great change. And look, I hope stability returns, but I don't plan on it. And that's why I personally take the prepping lifestyle so seriously. And I'll be honest with you, even as I built these systems for my family, I found myself wondering, is it enough? Every time I added another margin or another safeguard, I would see something else in the world start to fray. And once you start paying attention, you just realize how quickly things can come apart. What used to feel stable, it really looks fragile. And that question, have I done enough? It never really leaves you. Maybe you felt that as well. And even as we prepare, it can feel like the world around us and the ground under us feels less safe and less steady each year. It's a tension every prepper realizes at some point. And I'm going to share more about how I dealt with that later, but for now, I want you to know that you're not feeling it alone if you're going through this. That is why we're here together. This workshop is for families and individuals who do not want to gamble their safety on someone else's showing up to rescue them. It's for people who want to make sure that what they put in place will see them through uncertain times. It's for parents who want their kids to be okay if the shelves go empty. It's for apartment dwellers who want peace of mind. And it's for anyone who feels that quiet voice inside saying things are not as stable as they used to be. And if that's you, you're in the right place. But for many people who want to prepare, they get stuck. They start, they stop, and they never really gain traction. So let's talk about why. I think first, many people feel overwhelmed when they're starting out. You go online, you find 100 different voices saying 100 different things, and that noise, it can leave you paralyzed. Second, fear of doing it wrong. Budgets are tight, and so no one really wants to waste money on gear that's not necessary. So they hesitate. And then there's third, the doom fatigue issue. You've taken some steps, but constant fear-based messaging leaves you burnout instead of confident. And the doom scrolling is robbing you of the use of your hands to take action to implement fundamental strategies of preparedness. And at some point, it's best to deal with the approaching storm than to stare at the ominous clouds as they approach. Finally, there's the fear of being labeled. Some people hesitate to take preparedness seriously because they worry it's going to make them look like someone on the fringe. And that concern can lead them to avoid building real systems or involving their family and community. They keep their efforts quiet, unsure if what they're doing is reasonable. And over time, that isolation can wear them down, and many people give up on the next disaster until the next disaster jolts them back into action. And that cycle, it happens because people sense the instability around them. They know they should be doing something now, but without clarity, they don't know how to move forward. But preparedness, it's not extreme. It's practical. It's what generations did before us, before everyday life got in front of us, and it enabled us to really get comfortable. They stored food, they secured water, and developed skills, not because they were afraid, but because they understood that their future survival depended on daily effort. Today, we rely on global supply chains and overnight delivery, but those systems are fragile. When they falter, it's the people who prepare that really make the difference. And there's nothing wrong with you wanting to be ready. You're part of a long tradition of resilience, and the more we normalize that, I think the stronger our communities become. Inside of our city preparedness, city prepping community, we cut through the noise. We give you a clear path. Smart spending priorities, step-by-step courses, and a private community where you can ask questions without judgment or politics. Members join for clarity, but they stay because they make steady progress and finally gain confidence. And I'll definitely tell you more about that a little later, but here is what some of the folks in our community have to say about our structures and systems. The way you have helped me most is by staying calm and always focusing on the small, actionable steps. That is what keeps the chaos from overwhelming me. Since joining, I've started storing food and water, and even have raised chickens and planted a garden. Whenever I fall off, the community gets me back on track. The courses gave me tools to see what I had and what I needed and how to plan, and that has reduced my anxiety and given me confidence. Think about this with me for just a moment. Think about what we've gone through over the last several decades. When I was a kid, my parents and grandparents always had a stocked pantry. A snowstorm could hit and we'd be fine for a week without even thinking about it. Our food came from local farms. Neighbors checked in on us each week and helped us that were close by. And maybe you remember those times. But fast forward to today, one snowstorm and our shelves are stripped bare in hours. Our food doesn't come from the local farm down the road anymore. It comes from trucks that travel thousands of miles across fragile supply chains. And neighbors, they're more distant. The systems that we've trusted in the past, government agencies, emergency response, global trade, they're stretched even thinner than ever. And you saw this in 2020. A pandemic hit and suddenly toilet paper was gone. Meat prices, they shot up. Ships were sitting offshore, unable to unload. And that wasn't just a one-off. That was a preview of what fragility really looks like. In the 1970s and 80s, blackouts and shortages, they were tough, but life was not wired into fragile systems the way it is now. You could still pay cash at the store or pump gas without a computer. Even today, everything now runs on constant energy and data. One break in that supply chain and whole systems fell, which is why being prepared yourself matters more than ever. When I look around at what's happening, it really confirms that stability is not coming back the way we really might hope. In many parts of the country, homeowners insurance is either doubling or vanishing because companies won't cover areas that are hit by fires, floods, or hurricanes. And if you can get it, the cost is crushing. Even here where I'm at this structure, to get fire insurance was expensive. And families who thought they were protected are finding out that safety nets are disappearing. And our power grid is breaking under pressure. Rolling blackouts during heat waves, outages during winter storms, events that were rare are now becoming routine. And people are left in the dark, literally, and often fighting just to stay safe in their own homes. And on top of that, jobs, they feel less secure than ever. AI is reshaping industries overnight. Even if your paycheck is steady today, you know deep down how fast that can change. The safety nets we grew up with, they're not there anymore. If you felt things aren't as stable as they used to be, you're right. We're seeing reality for what it is. Let me take a moment to be just a little vulnerable here with you about something. Realistically, again, this is my own view. I don't see things necessarily getting better, and I'm just being honest here. And that might make me sound like a skeptic or a pessimist, but the more I watch and the more I pay attention, the clearer it becomes that safety nets of the past are gone. I try as hard as possible to be a realist and see the world the way it is. And we're too close to the edge to assume things are just going to snap back to whatever normal was in the past. And you might feel that as well. And if you do, you're not imagining it. And that's why prepping has never been about paranoia for me. It has always been the pragmatic thing to do, because when those safety nets fail, you and I become the safety net for our families, our friends, and even our communities. Some people prep just to get through the next week. Others focus on the sensational scenarios that grab the headlines. And look, I don't dismiss either, but my approach is different. I start with the most likely scenarios and then build toward the bigger challenges with confidence. I focus on the practical first, laying a strong foundation, and then expand to cover broader concerns. And what I will not do is bury my head in the sand and pretend that challenges won't come, because they will. I'll go into this a little more with each step I'm going to outline for you here in just a moment. But I do not stay stuck in these concerns. Instead, I focus on what I can control. So here's the good news. Preparedness does not take years, and it doesn't take a bunker. It takes a few smart and deliberate steps. And I'm going to walk you through them right now. You will see the whole framework as we're about to lay it out. And if you want help putting it into practice, you're going to find everything inside the City Prepping community, which we'll talk about in just a moment, along with ongoing courses, monthly challenges, and a network of people that are walking this same path. So let's start with step one, knowing your personal risk. Step one is to know your personal risk. Before you buy your first prep, before you stock a single can of food or purchase a flashlight, the most important step is to understand exactly what you're preparing for. Too many people skip this part. They chase checklist or Hollywood-style doomsday gear and end up with piles of things that don't really address the real vulnerabilities. And when they finally pull it out, they find they do not know how to use it, it's cheaply made, or it doesn't really do the job. Prepping without clarity is wasted money and wasted effort. And real preparation really starts with knowing your actual risk. Many people jump into prepping without a plan. They watch a video, find a checklist online, and they start buying gear. Pretty soon they have spent hundreds or even thousands of dollars, and they still do not feel any safer. Or worse, when disaster strikes, they do not have what they actually need. But the truth is that risks fall into three modes. They are acute shocks, things like earthquakes, hurricanes, or blackouts that hit fast. Then there are slow burns like inflation, water restrictions, or job loss that stretch for months. And then there are structural breaks. When a system fails and does not return, like insurers pulling it out of entire states, a critical medication vanishing from supply chains, or a power grid that never stabilizes after repeated failures. And if you don't prepare with all three modes in mind, you're prepping blind. And that begins with your region. I live in Southern California, so earthquakes and wildfires are just my my top threats. And in Florida, the big concern is hurricanes, and in the Midwest, it's tornadoes. Some areas deal with flooding almost every year. Others face winter storms that knock out power for days at a time. But geography also hints at slow pressures. Droughts, they turn into multi-year water restrictions. Fires can make insurance unaffordable for entire neighborhoods. Fragile grids buckle from extreme heat or cold, not once, but season after season. And these are not just bad weeks, these are signals that life may never return to normal in the way that we remember it. But risks are not just about where you live, they're also about your household. Do you or a family member rely on electricity for medical equipment? That's a risk. Is your budget so tight that you have no cushion? That's a risk. Do you live in a region where life could be unbearable without heating or cooling? That's a risk. And what about the slower threats? A job market turned upside down by AI, a prescription that has already been backordered once, a landlord who decides not to renew. These are not one-time emergencies. They are the everyday cracks that can push a family toward collapse if not addressed early. For me, living in Southern California meant fire and earthquake preparedness. And on top of that, water scarcity is a daily reality. So when I got serious about preparedness, the first steps I took were storing water and creating an evacuation plan. And these steps, they didn't come from a random checklist. They came from knowing my actual risk. But I also pay attention to longer pressures. When I saw insurance companies withdraw from fire zones near me, I realized that was not a short-term disruption. That was a structural break. And when I see friends struggling to afford basic groceries because of inflation, I see that as a prepper risk as well. And these are reminders that being prepared is not just about surviving a bad weekend. It's about staying steady when the systems that we rely on do not recover. For you, the biggest risk may not be natural disasters at all. It might be financial instability. What if you lost your job tomorrow? Could you keep food on the table while you get back to your feet? It might be health related. If you or someone in your family or your household needs daily medication, what happens if the pharmacy is closed for a week? Or worse, if that drug is suddenly unavailable for months? Would everything fall apart? It could be something personal. A single parent may worry about how to reach their kids during a disruption. A family with elderly parents may need a plan to evacuate them. Pet owners, they know that if you cannot feed or shelter your animal, it becomes a barrier to your survival choices. And these are not Hollywood disasters. They are the real life collapses that force families into crisis every year. But the solution you can plug in for all these problems is proper prepping. And then there are community risk. Maybe you live in a neighborhood where most people are already stretched paycheck to paycheck. Even in the suburbs, the illusion of fenced-in backyards, it can provide a false sense of security. If shelves go empty or paychecks stop, tensions can rise fast. And I'll break down how all of this collapses in a few minutes here. Consider prolonged heat waves. Rolling blackouts begin and your home grows dangerously hot. And for a healthy adult, it's uncomfortable. But for a toddler or elderly parent, it's life-threatening. Community risk is also economic. When local businesses close, when utilities cannot maintain service, or when trust in local government breaks down, collapse does not just come from outside, it comes from within. Your environment beyond your front door is part of your risk picture. But one thing I always encourage is to start with a risk assessment tool. Inside of our membership area, for instance, we provide one that helps you identify your top 5 most likely risk. And it keeps you focused on what is essential, so you don't waste time or energy or money on things that really don't matter. But here's the truth. Don't get caught up in the fringe possibilities that have a low probability or are unlikely. You need to prepare for the events already proving how fragile our systems are. Things like storms, outages, inflation, water shortages, civil unrest. Do I prepare for more than just these things that I just outlined? Yes. I prepare for what I believe is a very real possibility to see society unravel in the coming years. And that's part of my long-term prepping plans as I look to the horizon. But I also pay attention to what's in front of me right now. And I don't let the distance possibilities, the what ifs, I don't let those consume me. Instead, I focus on the most likely scenarios now. And once you identify your biggest risk, the next question is, what do I need in place to ride those out if they never snap back? And that is where step 2 comes in. Step 2 is to organize the essentials that keep you steady through the first week and to set them up in a way that can extend to 3 weeks or more if help never comes. Systems, they don't always come back online, or the aftermath devolves into chaos. And most people overcomplicate this. They bounce between checklists and stockpile gadgets, but the truth is you do not need a bunker. You need a foundation that prevents panic, whether the crisis lasts 3 days, 3 weeks, or 3 months. And I would encourage you to focus on 3 essentials: water, food, and the third one is what I call your wild card. These are the pillars that give you the stability whether the disruption lasts 3 days or 3 months. And water's always the first, and without it, every other plan fails. Even knowing that, you would be surprised at how many people prepare for disasters but fail to store water. And there's some assumption that when you open the tap, water is going to flow. But the truth is that the municipal water supply is just as vulnerable to failure as your power supply. Next up is food. It keeps your family steady, nourished, and calm when everything else feels uncertain. For this, you need to go beyond just the 2 or 3 cabinets modern construction provides for you to store your food. And then it comes to the wild card, the third item. This is the unique factor that would push your family into crisis the fastest if it disappeared. Ask yourself this. If the power went out, the tap runs dry, stores close, and paychecks stop, what would break you first? The answer is your wild card. And for some, it's the power for medical gear. For others, it's baby formula, pet food, or medicine that cannot be skipped. And for some, it's a simple way to get news and instructions when the internet's unreliable. History shows how quickly a wild card can become life or death. For example, after Katrina, dialysis patients had no power for treatment and their lives really hung in the balance. After Hurricane Maria, families could not refrigerate insulin and many were left desperate. In Venezuela, families could still buy rice but could not get cooking fuel to prepare it. And in each case, water and food were critical, but the wild card was what decided who endured and who collapsed. And that's why I tell people to start with water, food, and one wild card. Solve each for 72 hours, then extend them to 3 weeks. Because when disruptions stretch longer, you're not going to have time to identify your wild card in the moment. The crisis itself, it's going to reveal itself. And by then, it may be already too late. So let me explain how things break down. Because we really need to have a clear picture of this. Day one often begins with things like power outages. At first, it feels like an inconvenience. You grab a flashlight, light candles, and reassure the kids. As the hours pass, the refrigerator warms, food begins to spoil, and medical equipment, it no longer works. Phones die, cash registers at stores don't work, and ATMs, they shut down. Oddly enough, it can even feel a little festive, maybe at the beginning. Neighbors roll out their grills, cook what is in their freezers before it spoils, and they share a few resources. And there's still a lot of hope things are going to go back to normal. But now consider a more difficult scenario. What if the power does not return? And we've already seen rolling blackouts in California that stretch for days and repeated for weeks. Entire regions have lost electricity after storms or floods, sometimes for a month or more. Across the country, we're already living with disruptions from extreme weather, social unrest, political violence, and aging infrastructure. Now, any one of these could be the spark that takes a temporary outage and turns it into a larger crisis. Now, imagine that becoming the new norm in your own community. And that is why planning for power, I believe, is not optional. By day 2, if power is not restored, pumps stop working. Taps run dry and toilets no longer flush. And those gravity-fed water systems on the hills around your town or the towers are not being replenished, so the pressure drops to a trickle that runs dry. And without stored water, families quickly turn to unsafe sources. After disasters, we've seen people filling buckets from rivers, ponds, fountains, lakes, or even drainage ditches when nothing else was available. And illness begins to follow when desperation takes over. Now consider what happens if water service is not restored. And we've already seen cities in the West struggling with chronic shortages and restrictions. But imagine a modern community where the taps stay dry for weeks. And without water storage and a way to purify new supplies, collapse, it's really only a matter of time. By day 3, panic starts to set in and spills into grocery stores. Assuming some cash registers are operational, shelves are typically stripped bare. Perishable refrigerated food by law has to be disposed of after a certain number of hours without power. And we've seen police used to guard dumpsters after this has happened. Food stops being a comfort and becomes a survival issue for the desperate and the unprepared. Long lines begin to form at gas stations. Studies of hurricane zones show most gas stations run out of fuel within 4 to 24 hours after a surge begins. And people are topping off their tanks and getting fuel for generators. And this adds to the growing panic, and people become even more desperate about the necessities like food. Food storage is not a luxury. It's about calories, nutrition, and stability. A warm meal in the middle of uncertainty grounds your children. Children may not understand why life is unstable, but they understand dinner on the table. Now think about what happens if stores are not stocked. Suppliers are going to send their trucks into zones where roads may be impassable. People may get desperate, or there may not be infrastructure and gas available. We have already seen supply chains seize up during storms, strikes, and the pandemic. Even a single trucking disruption can leave store shelves empty for days. And if a larger event halts transportation or shuts down distribution centers, food may not come back at all. Families who do not already have reserves will face the consequences first. By days 4 and 5, sanitation begins to collapse. Trash piles up, hygiene slips, and pests spread. Pharmacies are closed, possibly even looted or robbed. Medical needs go unmet. In almost every disaster, more people die in the aftermath than in the initial event. And the reason is often because sanitation and lack of medical care. Infants run out of formula, neighbors get sick from spoiled food, and someone with asthma cannot find an inhaler. People with chronic conditions suddenly have no access to the treatment that they depend on. And if supply chains do not recover or hospitals remain overwhelmed, what started as a short disruption becomes a full-scale public health crisis. By the end of the first week, communication networks begin to falter. Cell towers, if they remained operational, they begin to lose backup power. Internet service, and if anything like this begins, or rather internet service, if any, becomes unreliable. Rumors and misinformation spread faster than facts. And at the same time, desperation drives theft, and small disputes can escalate into violence. Families who once felt secure discover how quickly order can slip away. Now imagine if communications are not restored or if law enforcement is stretched too thin to respond. We've already seen glimpses of this during times of social unrest, political violence, and natural disasters. Communities that lose both communication and security, they often do not return to stability for years. So, do you see a pattern? Power fails first, then water, then food, sanitation, and medical systems follow that. And by the end of the week, communication and security are strained. One system falls, then another, and each pushes your family closer to crisis. And this doesn't happen over a long period of time. They compound and accelerate each other. Now imagine those systems never come back. Imagine living without reliable power for months, without affordable food for years, or without functioning emergency services in your neighborhood. And this is not just a theory, it's what happens when fragile systems meet overwhelming pressure. And we've seen it in other parts of the world that were once incredibly stable before they suddenly were not. Covering water, food, and your wild card, that gives you a foundation to ride out a short disruption. Whew, let me take a breath here for a second. Extending these systems to 3 weeks or more is what really prepares you for the possibility that recovery does not arrive. Having clear calculators, checklists, and guides, it really takes away the guesswork. They show you exactly how much water your family needs, what foods you need to store first, and how to identify your wild card before crisis reveals it to you. And without that clarity, most people, they waste money on the wrong things. And with it, you cover what truly matters. Once you cover water, food, and your wild card, you can make it through the first week without panic. From there, you can extend those systems to 3 weeks and beyond. And if disruptions continue, your foundation is already in place, and you're not scrambling like everyone else. And that's why step 3 is so critical. Step 3 is building lasting resilience. Resilience is not luck, and it's not endless stockpiling. It is planning skills and community. It is the ability to keep your family stable when the crisis stretches longer than a week. And resilience means asking the hardest questions now. What if the lights never come back on? What if food prices never return to what they were? What if law enforcement is too overwhelmed to respond to your area? What if civil systems begin to falter in ways that we once thought were impossible? When you prepare for that level of disruption, short-term events no longer shake you. You're not waiting for rescue. You're building a system that keeps you steady no matter how long the crisis lasts. Several years ago, massive fires broke out near my community. A friend volunteered at a FEMA staging area where evacuees had gathered. And what she saw and what she told me was eye-opening. Most people had grabbed valuables like photo albums or expensive paintings off their wall, but very few had brought anything remotely close to survival supplies. Hardly anyone had food, water, or backup power. She ended up showing up there with a small solar generator. People began to line up to charge their cell phones. And a simple step that she had taken, it really made a huge difference for those around her. Planning is not only about evacuating during a firestorm, it's also about staying steady during long disruptions. Decide now how you would lower your monthly expenses if your income was interrupted. Decide how you would cook meals if fuel was limited. Decide how you would keep warm in winter or cool in the summer if the grid was unreliable. Picture this. There's a hurricane evacuation where roads are clogged because most families had no plan to leave early. Picture a citywide blackout where neighbors are fighting over the last packages of food on swiftly emptying shelves. Picture civil unrest in a downtown area that makes whole blocks unsafe overnight. And these are the realities when people wait to think about a plan until it's too late. 3 days is really only the beginning. 3 weeks really changes your posture, but even that is not always enough. We grew up expecting that when a system went down, it would be restored quickly. Today, that assumption is fading. Power outages that once lasted hours now last days. Supply chains that once bounced back in weeks sometimes take months. Insurance covers jobs and social systems that once felt stable, they're disappearing completely. And these may not restore the way we remember. In fact, they may get worse. From 3 days to 3 weeks, you're building a solid foundation. From 3 weeks forward, you're building resilience for a world where disruptions last longer and recovery is not always guaranteed. Water moves from a few stored gallons to storage plus filtration and capture. Food moves from a closet stash to a working pantry that you rotate and restock. Power moves from candles to a reliable solar and battery setup that keeps your essentials running. Income moves from one paycheck to a backup plan you can activate when the unexpected happens. And every extension adds margin and buys you time. The goal is not to live in fear. The goal is to stay steady when normal systems take far longer to return, or when they never return at all. Resilience is not about having more stuff, it's about having the right systems and the skills to use them when the systems around you fail. Skills reduce dependence, cooking without electricity, filtering and storing water safely, treating injuries when medical care is delayed, repairing gear instead of replacing it, growing food in a garden, or sprouting indoors for fresh nutrition. And if you only prepare by buying supplies, you are still dependent on outside systems. And when those systems break down or take months to return, skills fill the gap. Practice now so your hands know what to do when your head is under stress. Manuals and good intentions will not save you in a moment. Confidence built through practice is what creates real resilience. And there's another layer to resilience: community and accountability. In our city prepping community, one member told me, sometimes others have given me a playful push, sometimes saying less tinfoil, more prepping. And that accountability kept me focused and productive. And your community is really a vital prep. Community multiplies what you can do alone. And if you're preparing in isolation, it can feel like pushing a rock uphill. But when your spouse, your children, your neighbors, or friends are part of the plan, the weight is shared. A neighbor with tools and another with medical skills can accomplish much more together than either could on their own. And when normal systems are down, communities either fracture or they come together. Sometimes they have a little of both, but having even a small circle of trust means you are not facing prolonged outages, shortages, or unrest by yourself. The truth is that if disruption stretches for weeks or months, isolation, it makes things worse. Community gives you strength to endure, and this is where our city prepping community shines. Courses like our 3 weeks to 3 weeks prepared and small space prepping, they walk you step by step through resilience planning that works for your life. And whether you live in an apartment, a suburb, or a rural area, you get tools to expand your stability from days to weeks and eventually months. And let me just be honest with you here for a moment. Perhaps like you do, I've talked about this earlier, I don't necessarily see things getting better in our future. And again, that does not make me a pessimist as much as it makes me a pragmatist. And I mean, just look around. How stressed are you about our present and our future compared to this time just a year, 2, 5, 10 years ago? Even this last week has been personally very difficult for me, seeing things that are going on, seeing neighbors react, seeing people get upset. And it just, how should I say it? It feels like we just continue to move toward that edge. And I see systems that were designed to secure us and save us really failing in larger and larger ways. The outages last longer, the shelves stay empty more often, the political violence and discord grows louder. The safety nets that we once counted on are not as reliable as they used to be. Tragedies, they compete for space in the same 24-hour news cycle. To me, it feels like watching a fuse burning down closer and closer to its charge. And we don't know when it's going to ignite, but we know it's moving in one direction, and most of us are standing too close to it. And that's why we prepare, not out of fear, not because we cannot ignore what we see in right front of us. Resilience means not waiting until the spark reaches the powder. It means building systems now that will hold no matter what comes. There's more to learn and many mistakes to avoid, and I cannot give you a complete personalized long-term plan in a single live stream. And that's why the next section is about putting what we've covered into action with a clear, proven system. And without a system, most people, they stay stuck in good intentions. And with a system, you can move forward one step at a time and build resilience that lasts. And if you feel what I feel, that things are not recovering as fast as they once did, and that many cases are even getting worse by the day, you know why this really matters. The fuse is burning. Preparedness is how we keep from consuming us and our families. Can you see how knowing your risk, securing your essentials, and getting 3 weeks prepared really changes everything for your family? It is the foundation that moves you from fragile to stable. Can you see how a clear plan means you're not relying on empty grocery store shelves or slow government responses when disasters hit? Can you see how building systems, not stashes, gives you resilience against blackouts, floods, supply chain shocks, even job loss? And can you see how prepping is not about paranoia, but peace of mind, the ability to sleep better at night knowing your family is covered? That peace of mind is the point. In short, can you see why practical preparedness is a skill worth having? It gives you confidence when the rest of the world is unsure. And for over a decade now, I've been teaching preparedness. Over 1 million people follow City Prepping, this channel on YouTube, because they know I cut through the noise and deliver practical, level-headed steps. People who act on clear steps, they do better when others are scrambling. And here's what I've learned. Most people, they want to be prepared, but they get stuck. They don't know where to start, they waste money on the wrong gear, or they get overwhelmed by the information overload. Even for people who've been doing it for a while, you know, prepping can look a lot like kind of a start, stop, jagged path, and it can be lonely. It can be overwhelming, and it can be intimidating. But let's be honest. Most people either give up or they freeze because it seems like there's always more to do, and it's hard to know exactly what to prioritize first. And that start and stop cycle, it keeps families vulnerable and waiting for someone else to fix it. Here is a clear path. Not another stack of PDFs, not a vague checklist buried deep on some website somewhere, but real clarity, real guidance, and real people working together, the same goals alongside you. That's why I built something to make the path simple and clear. It's called the City Prepping Community. It's the systems I wish I'd had when I started out. It gives you structure so that you can act at a steady pace. It's where I walk you through step by step the same preparedness framework that I've taught tonight, but with the tools, the guide, and support that help you actually do it. Instead of just trying to piece things together from 100 sources, you get one roadmap, one library, one community, all in one place. And here's a quick takeaway that you can use tonight. Let's just do a quick 10-minute audit. List your top 5 likely disruptions and disasters and draw 3 columns labeled water, food, and wildcard. Put 1 concrete action in each box, and that mini map becomes your starter plan. Personal preparedness plan, you know, when you start looking at it, most people, they really don't have a roadmap. So I created a 5-phase plan that shows you the full roadmap from 3 days prepared to 3 weeks to 3 months of resilience. And this includes doing a risk assessment because where you live will help you to determine your priorities. It immediately removes the overwhelming aspect about this, and it shows you exactly where to start. So next, try this. On that same piece of paper with your 3 columns, I encourage you to circle your top risk and write down 2 actions that you're going to take in the next 7 days. Of course, our 5-phase preparedness plan, it goes way more in depth than that, but I want you to have something, even something simple at the end of this and that you can have in your hand to start. Now, our larger plan, we've calculated out based on everything that we built over the years, and it has a value of at least $349. And most people, they get stuck sorting through scattered, conflicting advice online. So I built a curated library that walks you through the 9 core areas of survival step by step. So instead of wasting months on trial and error, you're going to have clear, practical tutorials all in one place. And it saves you time, it eliminates confusion, and it keeps you moving forward with confidence. A practical tip from the pantry section you can use whether you join or not is use the 2-for-1 rule. Each time you buy a shelf-stable item that you already eat, buy an extra one and place it at the back. Rotate oldest to the front. In a month, you're going to have a margin without guesswork. On their own, resources like the one that we built would cost you a couple of $100s or more, but we bundled them into one system. And if I were to sell it individually, we'd value it at least $240, but I think it's worth even more than that. Preparedness isn't just something you figure out once and then you forget about it. Threats, they can change. Advice goes stale and motivation fades if you're not with other people and you're just on your own. And that's why we built a community. And inside it, you'll get fresh survival content and hands-on challenges every single month. Each theme focuses on a specific area of preparedness, such as water storage, blackout readiness, evacuation planning, or food security. And it breaks it down into simple, manageable steps. For example, from our blackout month, we provided people with actionable challenges like store at least 1 gallon of water per person per day. 3 is ideal. Identify 3 safe water sources within 1 mile. Do a 30-minute lights out drill this week and note the gaps. And just these 3 moves today, they really raise your baseline. And our strategy is to make it easier for you. You're not just collecting information, you're taking action each month and making steady progress instead of feeling stuck. Now, before long, you're 100 times more prepared in just a short amount of time. And this keeps you moving forward consistently rather than stopping and starting and wondering what to do next. It transforms preparedness from a vague intention into a habit and lifestyle that you can maintain without burning out. And this month, we're kicking off our most popular challenge that we've done in the past, the 3 weeks prepared in 3 weeks challenge. If you join tonight, and get on into our community. You're going to be part of it. Together, step by step, we're going to walk you through the critical process of building your 3-week baseline of food, water, and essentials. And that's not just my mission for you personally. It's my broader mission in the next 5 years on this channel to help 10,000 families hit this milestone of resilience. Because once you have 3 weeks prepared, everything else changes. And that's worth $360, I think, at least, or more, based on what we've calculated in the past. But one of the biggest challenges in preparedness is isolation. It's easy to feel like you're the only one doing this, and that slows your growth. But the truth is, when you can connect with others who are walking on the same path, everything accelerates: your knowledge, your confidence, and your results. And that's why we built the Prepper Lookup Map. It's a tool designed to help you connect, share, and learn faster from people near you. It turns preparedness from a solo project into something that you can lean into with others. And I've seen firsthand the power of local connections. During a major power outage, I was able to help neighbors with critical equipment, and they've helped me in return. And that's the strength of community. With the Prepper Lookup Map, you don't just grow your own resilience, you become part of a network that lifts everyone up. Just that Prepper Lookup Map alone would be worth several $100s or more easily, and it's priceless if someone is able to help you or you're able to help someone else in a tight spot. If you'd like a mini exercise you can use on your own this week, sort of like something we might do as a challenge in one of our courses, text 2 neighbors, swap numbers, and agree just to check in on each other after an outage. Simple, it's free, and it's powerful. One of the things we do in the community each month is a live Q&A calls with myself. Most disasters, they unfold faster than a YouTube upload, and that's why we hold regular live calls where I brief you on what's happening in real time and answer your questions. In these sessions, they really keep you ahead of unfolding events and give you a direct line to clarity instead of uncertainty. We've typically set the value at $150 for joining this community a year, but staying ahead of the next crisis could be worth far more. Our community is also a community of peers. Prepping, it can be a lonely road if you're doing it on your own in isolation, and you probably already realize that. Inside of our city prepping community, you're surrounded by people who are actively working toward the same goal, real resilience. They share their wins, they hold each other accountable, and they remind you that you're not alone in this. One member whose screen name is Scout, he put it this way: I've lost track of the number of good ideas and explanations community members have shared that have helped me solve problems and make progress. And I really appreciate Chris's calm, rational approach to managing the site and his frequent reminders to find the right balance when it comes to prepping and life in general. Well done. Another member, HH Ranch, shared, it has been good to meet the like-minded and see the wealth of knowledge shared in this community. There have been many timely and informative posts, and I have been grateful for the camaraderie and kindness shown to one another. All this makes this community a catalyst for growth as preppers in a supportive and enjoyable environment overall. And though we've placed the value at $150 annually, for many members, the encouragement and accountability here is truly priceless. Members, they get access to a full set of tools and guides, and that's so important. Information without structure, it really leads to paralysis, and that's why we created practical tools a person can use right now, including the risk matrix to pinpoint your vulnerabilities and the 3-week and 3-month survival guides to help you build out your systems. Plus, we create guides on protecting yourself from cyber attacks, disaster planning, bugging out, water, food, and even recession-proofing your life and fitness. Together, they give you immediate actionable steps that can save you from costly mistakes and wasted time. These tools, valued at least $99, are designed to ensure your effort translates directly into results. And if you buy comparable resources separately, you'd spend well over $1,000 and a lot of time researching. We package them together so you can move faster and avoid detours. Together, the annual value, we've sat and looked at everything combined, is at least $1,500. And that does even include and count the peace of mind, the time saved, and the mistakes avoided. Because there's the other piece that nobody really tells you. Most people are going to waste hundreds or even thousands of dollars on things like gear, gadgets, and supplies they don't even actually need. But inside the community, you're going to know exactly what matters and what doesn't. Which means you'll skip paying all those extra costs and really allow you to focus only on what truly keeps your family safe. So let's look at it from another way as well. Think about what being unprepared can really cost you. Wasted food from panic buying, easily $300 to $500 a year. Hotel or evacuation costs during disaster, that can cost you thousands of dollars. Insurance deductibles you can't cover, $500 to $2,500. urgent medical or supply gaps when pharmacies or clinics are closed, often hundreds of dollars or more. And altogether, that's thousands of dollars in real world costs most families eventually face. Even one avoided hotel night or panic run to the store can pay for months of calm, deliberate prepping. And think about it this way. Every year, most of us pay thousands for car insurance, home insurance, even health insurance. Bills we hope that we'll never have to use or have to pay rather. In prepping, it's different. It's insurance that you will use whether it's a blackout, a storm, or just a tough month when money's tight. And these supplies and systems, they pay you back every time life gets rocky. Or compared to things we already budget for without a second thought. Many families will spend a couple $100s a month on streaming services, takeout, or hobbies. Even your cell phone bill probably costs more than this community. None of these everyday expenses will help you when disasters are at your door. But here's the kicker. In a crisis, you'll spend more in 1 week panic buying at the grocery store than you would an entire year inside this community. You'll pay for preparedness one way or another, but the difference is whether you do it with clarity and confidence or with panic and waste. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars. You don't have to pay $100 or a few $100s. You can join the city prepping community tonight for just $15 a month. And if you join now, you'll lock in that rate for life. That's right, actually for life, but only right at this time or before Friday at midnight. After that, this Saturday, we're actually going to raise the price and it's going to go up. But not just that, you might lose your momentum to prep. And it's not just me saying this. Here's what members inside the community are actually accomplishing. Donna told us, I love the spreadsheets and the tools inside the community have helped me map out exactly what I needed. Now I have confidence that nothing is falling through the cracks. Another member, great embroidery, shared last year was hard. I lost some animals and had setbacks, but the community kept me going. I've rebuilt, expanded my garden, and I'm moving forward again. And just in case summed it up beautifully. My food forest is finally producing, my water systems are in place, and I'm even running solar now. I can honestly say I have peace of mind that I never thought possible. And that's what happens when you're not just watching videos or stockpiling blindly. You actually follow a plan, step by step, with others alongside you. Imagine this. 3 weeks from tonight, you open your pantry, and inside of seeing a few scattered groceries, you see a clear, organized 3-week supply of meals that your family actually eats. And you know exactly how much water you have stored, and it's not tucked away, and it's not tucked away neatly, it's not taking over your living space. Your kids know what to do if the power goes out because you've practiced it once, and now instead of chaos, you feel calm. Or picture this. The next time a storm knocks out power in your neighborhoods are fumbling with flashlights and running to the store. But you've got backup lights, a way to cook, and enough margin to ride it out. And you're not scrambling, you're steady. And maybe you're the one who's helping someone else. And that's really the difference that these systems make. You go from worrying about the what ifs to knowing without a doubt that your family can handle it. And once you cross that line, the sense of peace you feel, it's really hard to put into words. When you join this community, you'll immediately get access to all of our courses, our forums, our past challenges, downloadable guides, maps, connecting opportunities, and everything else I mentioned here today. As well, you'll be able to jump into our upcoming 3 weeks prepared in 3 weeks challenge. In just 21 days, you'll finally feel ready, secure, and confident. You'll also get the just released small space prepping course, which we would normally sell by itself at $37 completely free, designed for everyday situations, apartments, suburbs, and urban living. Again, our mission is simple, to help 10,000 families reach 3 weeks prepared by 2030. I believe 3 weeks, I've always labeled it as a starting point because I believe once you get to that point, if you really understand the foundations, it allows you to grow to 3 months and beyond. Every family that hits that mark strengthens the community around them. And this is really larger than any one household. When thousands of families are already steady for 3 weeks, local stress drops, response time improves, and recovery is faster. Prepared homes make resilient neighborhoods. So here's your choice. You can leave watching this video with just a little more knowledge, or you can take action and have a complete system waiting for you. I encourage you to check out the link that we'll drop to down below. And again, this is a link to get access to our personal preparedness plan, a full library, a community, and the 3 weeks prepared in 3 weeks challenge that will be starting up here in a couple of weeks. Our membership price will increase to $17 a month next week. But when you join today, this week, you're going to lock in at the $15 a month rate forever. And this is the moment where you stop worrying and you start building peace of mind. So check out the link, lock in your membership before the end of Friday, and let's get you and your family 3 weeks prepared. Our membership price increases to $17 a month next week. But when you join today, you'll lock in at the current rate of $15 for a month forever. More than pricing, it's about ending procrastination. Taking that first action ensures that you're not alone, guessing and feeling behind anymore. Join us not only to protect your own home, but to help us reach 10,000 people, families resilient that will be prepared by 2030. I believe that when that many households are ready, we can change how communities face crisis. So let me kind of wind down by answering. I'm going to go into a few kind of Q&A that are very common questions that I get about this critical next step to really pull all your prepping efforts together. One of the first kind of common questions I hear is, what if I live in an apartment? I don't have space for all this. Yeah, that's one that I hear a lot. You don't need acres of land. Plenty of our members are in apartments or condos. It's about being smart with space, water storage that tucks into closets, pantry rotation, blackout kits. We even have a whole small space prepping course in a forum completely dedicated to this in our community. So we've already got that covered. Another question is, how much does it really cost to get started? Not nearly as much as you think. Honestly, most people waste money buying gear they don't need, and that's the biggest trap. And inside our community, we show you how to prioritize what matters first and what can wait. So you're not burning hundreds of dollars on gadgets, sometimes thousands. Many members are surprised at how affordable it can be once they stop guessing. Another question I often hear is, hey, I feel overwhelmed. How do I know where to start? Like I said earlier, that's the number one barrier. Being overwhelmed really stops people before they even get going. That's why we built a personal preparedness plan. It literally lays it out. Here's your first step. Here's your second. Here's what you can wait on until later. And the relief people feel once they see that, you can almost watch the stress drop off their shoulders. Another question is, why 3 weeks? Why not just 3 days or 3 months? 3 days is kind of the government recommendation, but most crises, they don't end in 3 days. Some disasters, they come on stronger, smoldering a bit in the aftermath, and give birth to an even greater disaster. On the other end of 3 months, or rather 3 days, is 3 months. And that's amazing. But for beginners, it can feel like climbing Mount Everest when they start. 3 weeks, in my opinion, is a kind of the sweet spot when starting out. It's doable, and it covers about 90% of real world events. And once you hit that, you've got a foundation that you can build on to get 3 months and beyond. Another kind of common question I get is, what if I don't have time to do all this? Look, most people don't. That's why we break it up into small steps. So a lot of our members will spend maybe an hour a week, and that's it. But over time, those little steps add up into real systems, and you don't need to overhaul your life. You just need consistent progress. Another question that comes up is, what makes this community different from just watching your YouTube channel? It's a great question. YouTube is an incredible asset, but it's information. The community is about transformation. That's where you get the roadmap, the tools, the challenges that get you moving, and direct access to me. And you're not alone. You're in a group of people on the same path, keeping you accountable. You get direction, a plan, a supportive community instead of just ad-sponsored videos covering everything under the sun. The next question is, what if I join and realize it's not for me? Then you can cancel. Simple as that. But honestly, most people stay because they finally feel like they're not just spinning their wheels anymore. They see progress and they stick with it. You showed up tonight because you're tired of worrying and waiting. You're ready to do something meaningful about your family's safety. And the first step is right here. Joining a community that's built specifically to help you succeed. It's about opening up and learning from others. And my thing is, here at the end of this video is I'll open up to questions here in just a second, but I would encourage you not to wait until the end to join. Like I said, we'll keep it at this price point on to the end of Friday. And I would encourage you to click the link, join us, and help move one more family closer to what our goal is 10,000 families prepared by 2030. Hey, if tonight is not your night, take the free actions I shared and start your 10-minute audit. Either way, take your next step before your head hits the pillow tonight. What I'd love to do now is just open it up to Q&A. I know we've got a lot of questions in the chat section. And what I'm going to do right now is open up a document that I created before we hopped on this and go over some questions. And again, any questions that you have, just post them all in uppercase, and that way our team can see what questions you have. And so here we go. I'll start with this one here at the top. Kevin M. Which one would be better for fuel for an open frame generator, propane or gas? I know propane does not give the same BTU as gas. However, it lasts much longer, is a lower BTU worth the trade-off. For me, I have dual fuel, and there's tri-fuel generators on the market. Almost everything I do with generators is I go with propane generators, simply because when you get into gas, you have carb issues, you have more work. Gas doesn't store and stabilize as long. Propane, I've got tanks out there from years ago. I'll plug them in, they fire right up. I remember I was visiting my dad one time in East Texas recently, and he had a tank out there from 20 years ago. He still fires it up and cooks with it. Same propane. If stored properly, it can last for about 25 years. So I'm a big fan of propane generators. I know they don't produce as much, about 20% under what gas can, but in all my generators that I have here are dual fuel. I've never put gas in any of them. I just simply go with propane because they store easier and less maintenance on them. I got another question about seniors that cannot move well, living in an apartment, or an area that's made of just concrete and bricks, and oh, I'm sorry, I don't even know if that's a question. That's a lot of information there. Here, let me step to the next one. Reese Rio. We have 10 solar panels and a 9 kilowatt hour Panasonic battery. I don't know if this system is set up to last for 3 days. I don't know how big your solar panels are. Let's assume 400 watts. So that would be about 4,000 watts or 4 kilowatts of solar, 9 kilowatt hours of battery. That's pretty decent on a new house, or rather the house on the other side of this property. We've got 11 kilowatts of solar, 20 kilowatt hours of battery. And I have not turned that house, or rather turned it onto the grid in months, or connected the grid. It runs fine on its own. I know that's double what you have, but if you can save, or you can, basically ration your power supply, 4,000 watts of solar and 9 kilowatt hours of battery, that's a lot. As long as, honestly, we rarely on that other house even tap into the full potential of solar. I'll fire up the air conditioner in the afternoon because we're not even using all the power it can produce, and it's still well under what it can do. So to answer your question, that's a lot. I think that's a great system. 3 days, as long as you do the basics, refrigeration, lights, some light stuff. I think that's an awesome setup, honestly. I got a question. Should foraging be on our list? And I'm assuming that's a list of how you prepare or just your approach. I have done videos on foraging in the past on the channel. Honestly, I look at foraging as kind of a last resort, but if you have to come to it, it's a skill that I think would be valuable. I would like to be in a position where I'm not reduced to that or have to go down that path. I think it's a skill or an ability that's worth looking at and learning for sure, especially if you're considering long-term grid outages or societal collapse, or things that things may not bounce back, or you lose food over time, or go through your supply rather. But it's something that we have covered on the channel. If you go to our YouTube, our channel at City Prepping, and you look in the search bar in our videos, if you look for foraging, you'll see videos that we've done that's cover that subject. But great question. Joan Times, what is the best rechargeable battery charger? I'm not sure if you're asking about solar generators when you refer to, because that's what I cover a lot on the channel, rechargeable battery charger. Assuming that's what you are referring to, again, I did a video recently, about a month or two ago on the channel, where I talk about the buyer's guide for 2025 for solar generators. If you haven't watched that video, it's got, I think at the time of recording this video, about 1.2 million views. Go over to my library and just go back about a month, or at least in the last month. I spent a lot of time answering that question. It's hard to answer without more details. The short answer is it depends on how much you anticipate you need of power. Do you have solar? There's a gazillion variables, and in that video I go through and give you categories based on units of certain sizes and what they can do, and then we have a spreadsheet at the end, a tool that will actually walk you through and help you. So again, check out that video if you haven't. It goes through that a lot exhaustively. Sandra Ellison, what advice would you give to an elderly couple with a disabled son? We probably wouldn't be able to bug out because of this. Yeah, it's an excellent question. It's one that I get a lot, especially when people have elderly family members or somebody that has a disability. In as much as you can, especially if they have medical equipment that they have to run off of. Again, as some of the other questions have come into, or a second ago about solar generators or generators, depending, I don't know if you live in an apartment, a suburban home, there's so many variables there. But typically, your best approach is, in as much as you can, to be able to stay in place, shelter in place, getting out into an unknown environment, bugging out, doing the things like that. Getting out of your normal safe zone can introduce a lot of variables. And again, you may not have a choice. You may be forced to flee. And at that case, finding either hospitals or facilities. And that's why it's important to calculate and figure those things out in advance, to have those things defined, that if we have to leave, and having that plan defined, that if we have to leave with an elderly member in a car or whatever transportation you have designated spots in advance that will be able to help hopefully provide service to that family member or whoever it is. So I guess in short, for individuals in these scenarios, you have to really think ahead. A lot of this, my family's relatively young. Fortunately, we don't have health issues, so we can move and we can be mobile. I'm not saying it would be easy, but we can do it. So again, I think we did a video. If you go and look at our video library, I want to say we did one years ago on seniors or the elderly, but you can search for that in our video library. I'm going to scroll down here. We'll try to get about 5 more minutes in. But Signal Blue said, if the grid goes down, how do we stay informed and communicate effectively? I did a video on the channel years ago on communication. And in that video, I went through kind of starting small, building up to different levels of communication, starting out with something as simple as obvious, our cell phone, depending on how long the grid is down. In our area, back in January when the fire started in LA, they started shutting power off here. And this is before I built all these off-grid structures here in the 2 houses on this property. We still were able to get internet access. Some of the towers were still up. I did notice that the internet was going really slow because everybody was using their internet. They weren't on home Wi-Fi. And so, you can start with something as simple as that. If you haven't already gotten your ham radio license, I've done a video on that. Go into my video library and look for ham radio license. I did a video years ago detailing that, how to get your license. That's another kind of step up. Then, there's options on the market. I don't have any here in front of me, like the Garmin Mini. They have the, totally blanking on the name, but it's their small satellite device that you can use to actually send text in and out of an area independent of cell phone towers. I have a Starlink setup that I bought years ago. I have it on the just basic $5 a month plan that it does it. I don't use it, but if I need it, I can activate it. And it's always there in case of a disaster. So I personally built in layers because communication is so critical. But again, check out that video. I think it's 7 ways to communicate after a disaster, and I go through that whole process. So good question. Rise Rio. We have freeze-dried food that I bought in 2015. Can we still eat it even though it is 10 years old? So the average rule of thumb for freeze-dried food is usually 25 years. If stored properly. And what I mean by that is, if you're not storing it out in the garage where it's hot, temperature, heat and humidity will decrease the life of freeze-dried food or anything else for that matter, especially heat. I've got a lot of freeze-dried food that I've bought over the last 10 years. I have an area in our house. I need to do a video on the channel about it. We filmed the setup, but it's a cold storage room that we have here at our property. And I use that to store, all of our food, rice, beans, the whole 9 yards, all of our freeze-dried MREs, yada, yada. I used to have it in a closet in one of our houses that wasn't really climate controlled. But to answer your question, if stored properly, 10 years shouldn't be an issue. Obviously, open it up, smell if anything's odd. But most of them, if stored properly, are 25 years. Jane, what is the best means of communication in emergency when there are no cell towers and when there's no leaving your area? I think we just covered that one a second ago. Hopefully, Jane, that question from a second ago about communication from Signal Blue, hopefully that answers your question. Sandra Lawford, any special recommendations for retirees? Retirees, I'm sorry if I said that too fast. I got an East Texas slur that comes out every now and then. Retirees. Yeah, I mean, my advice, and I'm not near retirement, but it feels like it's creeping up closer every day. I'll be 50 in November. And why am I saying that? Because, I do begin to think about the future. I think about my health right now. Working out for an hour a day, hour and a half, 4 to 5 times a week is critical to me because I don't want to be at an age where I'm at the mercy of a broken down body. My best friend is an occupational therapist, and he spent years when he started his career working with the elderly, people that neglect their body. And he always had the same stories. And he's a big advocate for working out because he's seen firsthand what that looks like. Why am I telling you this? Take care of your health as much as possible. If you're starting out or you're younger, take care of it now because trust me, it doesn't get any easier as you get older. But to answer your question, if you are retired, for me personally, I would start with health. Again, that's just where my mind goes right away. minimize your dependence on medication. I know that's not always possible. I'm not saying it is, but I'm very thankful. I don't have to. I'm, like I said, I'll be 50 soon, and every time I go to get checkups, they're always asking, well, what medications are you on? I'm on none, and they're always surprised. They're like, at your age, you're not on anything? No. And so take care of yourself. That to me is more invaluable than anything, especially as we get older. I know that's a short answer, but that's just where my mind goes. Chris Maka. Oh, it's always good to see you, Chris. How would you prioritize getting outside training? CERT, ham radio, medical, etc. Yeah, that was a good question. CERT, in my opinion, is easy start. If you don't know what CERT is, for those watching, Community Emergency Response Team. It's a FEMA program. Most local fire departments put it on. Just go to Google and search in CERT, C-E-R-T, in my community or my area, and you'll see where they have one. I think it's a great primer because honestly, that course kind of got me really serious about preparedness. And so, as years ago, because I remember the fire department chief explaining that, hey, if something goes sideways in our area, earthquake or whatever, you're on your own for a while because we're in a very remote area. We have the mountains surrounding us, one freeway in and out. Everything would be cut off. You're on your own for a couple of weeks. And that was a wake-up call for me. Get started with CERT. Yeah, ham radio. I think actually you kind of listen in the order I would go in. Ham radio probably next. And again, I got a video on my channel for that. And medical, absolutely. That's one that's still not my strength. It's something I'm working on. They have bleed out courses. I know the YouTube channel Bear Independent. He's got a whole they got this these medical training courses on the weekend that are for advanced trauma. Again, I get no affiliation from saying that, but again, there are courses out there for those options. Let's go down to the last question, and we're hitting. I want to spend about 15 or 20 minutes after this live stream. I know some of y'all are still sticking around. I appreciate it, but let me finish with this question. Let's see. Dennis Audit, A-U-D-E-T. What are the costs beyond $15 per month for city prepping resources? So that's our community. It's $15 a month. And again, we'll put the link below if you want to check that out. We have other courses, more advanced courses. We have our Prepper's Roadmap. That's a course I launched 3.5 years ago. And that one has its own unique price point. That one's a very, 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 very in-depth course. That took me a long time to build that course. I'll never forget that anyway, it's a very advanced course, and we've sold thousands of that. It's a real popular course. We've gotten incredibly high feedback on that one. We're going to rebuild it next year, but that's the other additional add-on course if you want it. And then we have one other course that we launched back in May this year. It's our Suburban Preppers Homestead. It's a whole different course that teaches you how to take a suburban home and take it off grid, solar, backup water, rain harvesting, chickens, gardening, composting. We go through a lot. Food storage, preservation, and we just go through and teach you how to become self-sufficient in a suburban environment. Let's do one more question here because we're not at 6:29. I'll try to give it the 20. Let's see. I'm sorry, a lot of solar for keeping. Here we go. Brandy Pickle. I apologize if I mispronounce that. Suggestions for keeping get home bag good in a car in a humid climate. Louisiana. Yeah. I grew up next to Louisiana in East Texas, and 30 minutes from the Louisiana border, so I know humidity. So obviously you have to think differently. You've got different pressures, different things. Your food, you're going to have to rotate that a lot more often. I live in a hot and dry climate, so heat is a big issue for me. So the food that we use those survival bars. A lot of them are designed for, I think, military applications, Coast Guards. So they're designed to be a little more heat resistant. But again, I would put, and what I've done in my case is I'll put a reminder in my calendar every 3 months to rotate the items in there: food, water. Definitely, you're going to want some kind of a metal water container instead of a plastic with potential BPA leakage with heat. And again, because of your humidity, that's going to add elements. Things like batteries may corrode faster, so you're going to have to check items that could potentially develop rust and stuff like that. So it's more of and again, that's a great question because every area has its own unique issues. Again, where I live, super hot and dry, so I don't have to deal with humidity. But again, my advice on that is check every 3 months, rotate things because it'll go bad faster. So on that note, I think we'll wrap it up. Again, this has been probably about 5 years since we've done a live stream. And again, I want to appreciate or just say thank you to everyone that joined us. Again, we're going to post a link to our community down below. We're really excited. We're going to launch that 3-week course next week, and we hope to have you there. So, as I always say at the end of my videos, stay safe out there. Take care. You can hit the end button.
It's in it, you don't have the link in the description section.